I'm okay with my 10-minute side.
You should be, because we see a lot of it. I haven't seen them in a while. So
You're
we gotta...
excused as soon as your item's done. You can just go.
Hey, you see you work in a circus, you live in a circus. See, I know that's true. So she was joking. She was joking.
It was really tell. It's hard to tell with
yeah.
her.
It was kidding.
Well, this
because eventually she's gonna go.
I understand that she doesn't joke well. That's the first time she told the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I didn't know. I think I didn't know until like 11 years.
Hey. Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? I did apologize. I shouldn't have said that right. Hey. Is it not true? You disagree with me? Plead the fifth. There's one more. There may be 3 or 4 more coming. I know.
Is that my water? Did you?
Time's 6:30. We'll call this meeting to order. Nathan, would you lead us in prayer?
Sure.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you today. Thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to be a part of this meeting. God is for peace. Pray for your guidance, wisdom.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. Y'all join us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
honor
On
the
the Texas flag,
I
pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right. As I say every meeting, the rules of decorum are in effect. The next thing up will be citizens' comments. When you come up to the podium, if you'll make sure the button's turned on so we can hear you from the speaker, make sure you state your name and your address. Mr. Donegan, you're first. Mike, you're first.
Okay. Thank you. I just got a couple of comments. I want to thank y'all for your work on the budget. I can support the budget. I can support the tax rate that y'all are going to be voting on. I do have some concerns, however, and I just want to. My biggest concern is I don't think that we've had a workshop in regards with the citizens in terms of the budget, have we? It's just been public hearings. I'm sorry.
There were 2 workshops on it.
Okay, there were 2 workshops. Okay, I'm sorry I missed them. But I appreciate that, and I highly recommend continuing doing that. My question is on the tap fee developer rebate. It looks like it goes up, it goes down. I have no idea what that means, and I'd be glad to get with one of y'all some other point in time and find out, exactly how that works within the scheme of the city budget. And then the other comment that I would have is as we take a look at, say, certain costs that they break down, like staff, say part. I don't see in here, unless I'm wrong, part-time employee expense versus full-time? Is it broken down? Is it separate? I would recommend that be on future budgets, that be broken down. And any other item like that where, it's just have different line items. But I appreciate your work on the budget. Certainly appreciate all the hard work on the proposed tax rate, and just want to tell you I can support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Mr. Agee?
Lance AG, 1509 Mesa Swana. Thanks for your time. Looking over to page 1011 of the proposed tax rate for fiscal year 2019-2020. And this looks like we keep the current tax rate from last year. Doesn't look like there needs to be an increase. Looks like you can draw your expenses. We've got a little more, I'm not going to say, a little more than reserves, unfortunately. I know that none of you were responsible for the financial situation the city is in, but each of you were elected to lower the taxes, keep the cost under control, and maintain that. We were elected to raise taxes. Well, I made a minuscule amount of money, and yes, that's all we're looking at. Yes, we weren't elected to raise taxes. I made a small amount of money, but they don't people's home values, the escrow, some people may have on their homes. That can increase their house payment. So we're not actually gaining much in doing the tax increase. Current rate based off their own presentation and what we have right here. Oh, we're not going to raise taxes. We're elected. Nothing that's up there. We all ran on. We're taking the fire department at $330,000, $320,000 rate. And if you were here to start on $150 fire department, those guys are great, but we've already overpaid the $60,000 plus. Not going to take that. And that's a CPA. So if I got a CPA that can't manage payroll, we got a city administrator that can't do the same thing. How are these numbers going to work out? Who's going to manage it? Once you start increasing, and we have a lower tax rate, that's why we remove it. It's not because they have a separate thing and they have one power. They're removing it from the lower tax rate. They can get a house comparable here. It's cheaper than this Rockwall. A lot cheaper than in Turtle for this tax rate. I would advise you to keep the current rate. There's no reason to increase it. Your own presentation statement, you don't need that. You got a certified police officer over here who's over us all the pool or a pool. We're just going to be great on that. It's a waste of money. If we also need to look at something as far as some cuts as well. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Agee. Ms. Faulkner?
Working. Okay. Okay. 1518 Forenza Court, Adrian Baltham. Okay, so I realize, or at least it appears that you plan to approve the budget and the property tax rate. And so here are my questions that I briefly touched on at the last meeting. Did you ask Chief Simmons to provide what the current call volume is per year? Was it broken down by call type within the city limits and outside the city limits? If so, when do you plan to have the call volume, such as fires, MVAs, medical, to evaluate as a reason to determine adequate staffing? Because remember, the SAFER grant is here for a limited time. Months ago, I suggested to Chief Simmons, he has about a year to begin that research as billing the unincorporated area. So keep in mind, it's good for us to know these details so that we can inform Rockwall County Commissioners of this data. It's remotely possible that they may contribute additional funding if we have that data to prove that it is warranted for an increase in funding from Rockwall County. But that doesn't negate for our city to not have a plan to receive monies for services rendered from those who receive a MCFR service in the unincorporated area. So knowing the call volume will help facilitate a better understanding to recoup or adding funding to emergency services. So regardless of how large the fire station will be, it does not have to have every room filled with a person to operate it. I'm not suggesting or to support that idea that every room has to be facilitated with a person. It's just room to grow, and it is a wonderful opportunity for our city to work with our partner cities for training related or workshops to be utilized there. And as far as funding for MCFR vehicles, are we following the NFPA codes? Does MCFR follow NFPA standards regarding a preventative maintenance program for the fire apparatus? Here are just simple questions that should take part in determining and evaluating the cost of refurbishing or replacing an apparatus. Are replacement parts still available? Are the apparatus not built to NFPA standard or over 25 years old? What is the true condition of the existing apparatus? What technology advances for improved safety, effectiveness, and efficiency does the fire apparatus lack? Does the incumbent fire apparatus still meet its original operational needs? If refurbished, how will the fire apparatus compare to new fire apparatus for its level of safety and operational capabilities? How will the anticipated yearly cost to operate for a refurbished unit compared to that of a new apparatus? Is there a current trade-in value for the incumbent apparatus that might not be in the future? To establish safety is a primary concern for the continued in-service use of a fire apparatus and the ultimate decision to refurbish or retire that fire apparatus. I don't understand some comments that were made regarding the senior tax cap. How has it affected a loss of revenue since it was passed in 2016? What is the current call volume for the animal control contract? Remember, it was Rockwall County Sheriff's Office back in January 2017 who made a point to say that they needed, we didn't have enough bite in our ordinance, and that's the reason why we looked into the animal control, and we went through various contractors to determine like what was the best option. And I know that this it's per call right now, and then it's going to be changing, but we need to be aware that there was supposed to be evaluation that to determine if this contract is needed still. And why is it necessary to transfer $49,554 from the general fund into the Sonoma Verde utility fund? And I don't really believe that question was really addressed. And I think there was and I don't remember, I just quickly have to look at the agenda item in regard to, there was an item about Altura and the building construction and all that. About a year ago, Highland Homes brought it up to the council in the past, and it was a great idea. And we actually questioned, like, well, why aren't the other builders doing it? And so it's a good thing that Altura is doing it. I think we should definitely approve that. So anyway, that's all I have.
Jody Wright, 1513 Barolo Drive, Rockwall. I would like to first start by saying thank you for the work you've done on the budget. I would like to state that for each of you who are elected, I have personally, emphatically, completely supported you. Financially, emotionally, time, with every bit of resource that I personally had to give each of you. And I stand before you as a citizen that is completely disheartened. When, as a individual, when I have faced hard times, and there is no denying that what each of you inherited is a mess, doesn't begin to explain it, doesn't begin to state what you've inherited. I'm fully aware of that, fully aware of that. However, I'm also very aware that as a responsible adult, when faced with tough times, we get lean, we get mean. We cut every bit of unnecessary resource that we can find. In a household, that might mean eating beans and rice for a few months. The positive is you might lose a little bit of weight. The definite win is you're going to see an increase in your budget. My question to you is, as I stand here, and I could be mistaken, I believe we still have 2 fire chiefs, and no disrespect to anybody in this room. Side effect that I'll take as a positive, I elected you because I thought you had the managerial courage to come into this role and to make the right decisions, not the easy ones. And where I sit, it seems easy decisions have been made. I don't know if it's because there's personal relationships. I don't know if it's hard to cut it where it hurts and you're affecting people. So instead of a finite few, you affect everybody? I don't understand that logic. I've worked for businesses that haven't been successful with that logic. You're up there because I believed in you. The vast majority of the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm believed in you. And if you don't take that personally, then I would tell you to have a gut check of whether you're up there for the right reason. Many of you ran on bringing this community together. Unity was a word that I heard from the majority of you. So I'm going to ask you, when you go home tonight, I want you to look in the mirror, and I want you to ask yourself, is this community better today because of what you personally have brought to it by sitting in the chair you sit in? Have you brought community, unity into this community? And if any one of you honestly answer yes, then I would encourage you to get a different mirror. Thank you.
Some people have been writing a little hard for me to do sometimes. Is it Swanson?
Yeah.
Okay. Couldn't tell the last letter, so I apologize.
My name's Letitia Sorensen. Yes, thank you. I'm neighbors with some of you, actually, even though you don't know me. I know you. So I too am concerned about how we're using the money now that we're going to be spending in the future. As a senior, I still pay the 15%. I still pay the 15 cent, rather, that everybody else pays. You haven't lost any money because of me yet, unless you raise the taxes. So it's just a matter of that I live off a teacher's pension, which is not very much, to be honest. And my husband is passed away. He was a member of the city council. And anyway, I'm trying to live off that, and if I don't get a raise, then I don't know how I could give you all a raise. So that's kind of where the seniors are coming from, that we may not have the increase that you're looking for. Some of the other things, I'm concerned about the people out in the unincorporated areas that are getting the fire safety, and they're not paying anything for it. And it's up to the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm to pay for their safety, for everything that they're being protected for. And I'm glad that they are. I wouldn't want anything to happen. I mean, I was a patient, a client. I was a victim of that. I had to call 911 myself. But I live in the city, and I'm grateful that they were there very quickly. And I was taken to the hospital with a fall. So it's a really important issue that we need a fire and rescue and safety. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I just think since roughly maybe, I don't know how many, what's the percentage of the people who get their fires put out and their rescue calls, how many live in the city versus how many live outside a city. But it seems like there would be a way to assess them or to have them pay something towards it, because this is going to tax the citizens in this 32 square mile area that we have for the city, or for this area that they serve. So I'm concerned about that we could tax them or somehow assess them, and that would keep the taxes lower too. So I've lived on Frontier Trail for 36 years, and we've been doing the best we can to keep it manageable. We really are. I mean, people have thrown in their own gravel and thrown in their own bulldozers, and still the mail service does not think that it's good enough for them to deliver mail. So, and we've gone to the city to ask what can be done, and at first we were laughed at, but now, more recently, they were taking us more seriously, saying that we could develop a HOA. So that hasn't happened either, but I'm just saying there's some things that private residences would like to have done through the city, but they can't be because it doesn't qualify, because you're not supposed to pay for our private roads, and we know that. So to ask any individual entity to ask the city for money for their roads or for their septic is obviously out of line, because I've been told that for 35 years. So, I mean, I'm just saying, is there a way to go around and find ways to cut expenses? That's all, just cut expenses. Okay, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Real quick, everyone has said my name's David Black. I'm on Sienna Lane in Sonoma Verde. First, I know you guys, it's all volunteer position for you people. Is that right? So I know it's got to be a tough job. I guess most of you have day jobs, so that's a given, I would think. I would hope everyone realizes that. But I'm not for the increase in the taxes. I think, like the previous lady said, maybe a little more cutting expenses. Also, others have said the whole deal with the fire stuff, it still seems really kind of up in the air. And that was kind of the main reason for increasing the taxes, was to create these funds to be able to pay for the loss of the SAFER program and things. But I think maybe there needs to be some more time going over that a little bit more. And I think if you keep the rate where it's at, you're still going to have a surplus higher than we had this last year. The one question I had, hypothetical here, in the justification in the list of reasons to raise taxes, you did mention the 65 and older exemption as being a cost. And that was a law that was passed. And I'm hoping that doesn't mean that this city council is considering repealing the 65 and older exemption for the city. It's kind of scary for some of us. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Scott Turnbull, 1117 Newkirk Court. I stand before you once again to ask that you reconsider both the tax rate and your proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget. You are using the MCFR SAFER grant ending in 2021 as a smokescreen for this tax increase. 18 months ago, many of you currently on council and sitting in the audience argued passionately that 2 men manning the station 12 hours a day, 6 days a week was the perfect level of service. Yes, I supported accepting the SAFER grants. I did so because there were no strings attached. When the grant ends, no requirement exists to continue the 24/7, 365 service. The city can RIF all or part of the MCFR personnel if the call volume has not increased enough to warrant continuing 24-hour service. The council simply has to have the backbone to do what is fiscally right rather than politically popular. Has the council or chief completed a cost analysis study to determine the needs of the city? If not, why not? How can you claim you're taxing the citizens for a known need without proof of that need? Then there is the capital replacement fund. Is it needed? Yes. Is the original funding appropriate? Probably. Is the council's goal of funding the cash purchase of an $850,000 Quint aerial apparatus in 2022 realistic? No. Is it needed? No. By the chief's own standard of replacing engines every 10 years, this purchase isn't necessary until 2024 when the 2014 Fiera engine turns 10. Per NFPA standards, if properly maintained, the 2004 E1 Cyclone apparatus can serve in reserve until it's 25 or 2029. As for your plan to move $49,554 from the general fund to the utility fund to prevent the council from having to levy a sewer rate increase of approximately $18 a month on your Sonoma Verde voter base, well, that just might backfire on you. If you make the transfer, I'll recommend any citizen on a septic system submit their bills for maintenance and repairs to the city for payment. If every citizen must share the cost of the Sonoma Verde sewer system, every citizen must pay for every septic system in the city. It's stated that the AMPC 380 agreement will generate an additional $120,000 in sales taxes. Wonderful. Sign the agreement tonight. But once it's signed, you should adjust the tax rate to compensate for the additional revenue. Even if in its startup year 2019-2020, this agreement only produces 50% of, or $60,000, that is enough revenue for you to drop the tax rate to 15 cents and still meet or exceed your goal of a $330,000 surplus. Let's not overlook the operating fund balance increase of $181,915 to a total of $847,199 as of August 31. Based on your CPA's ad valorem tax rate analysis, you could drop the M&O rate to 0.095184, which would generate $332. Add to that the $181,915 additional surplus as of August 31 and the $60,000 additional sales tax revenue from the 380 plan, you have a grand total of $658,247 in revenue, $43,954 more than your 16.5 tax rate generates. Oh yeah, you get the extra bonus of being able to set the debt service rate at 0.054818, generating an additional $132,350 to apply towards the city bond debt. All of this for the low tax rate of 15 cents. Yes, you can keep the current tax rate and meet or exceed all of your stated goals. One last thing. At the last meeting when I addressed the council, if I scared any council member or made any of you feel threatened, I apologize. It was not my intention to do so. I simply was trying to emphasize what I believe was the outcome of a 16.5 cent tax rate. What I find reprehensible is that the mayor would allow a citizen to criticize me for exercising my constitutional right to political free speech. Furthermore, I was shocked that a citizen who so regularly wraps himself in the flag would have the audacity to criticize a fellow citizen for exercising their right of political free speech. Thank you.
All right, before we move on to the approval of minutes, the comment that was just made, Mr. Turnbull, I can understand your feelings about the comment made towards you. And he was also emphasizing his rights with free speech as well. That's a two-way street. I didn't agree with your comment the other night. Don't always agree with everybody's comments out here. But I should wrap myself in that flag for 8 years. I do like on everything as well. Thank you, sir. Moving on to 5.1, approval of a revised draft of the July 23rd minutes. Apparently, staff discovered there was something left off an error. Do I have a motion to approve the revised July 23rd minutes?
Make a motion to approve the revised July 23rd minutes.
Do I have a second? Okay. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Yeah, you're fine. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to September 10th, City Council meeting. Motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the September 10th, 2019 minutes.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay. I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we move on to item 6.1. Excuse me, my bad. I'm just trying to waste some time out there. 6.1, discussion and action regarding consideration of an interlocal agreement between the City of Frisco and the City of McLendon-Chisholm to cooperate in the purchase of various goods and services commonly utilized by participants from vendors under present and future contracts. I'll sum this up just a little bit before Chief Jones, if he folks, what this is, government agencies, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's fire, we piggyback off of each other for purchasing powers. The City of Frisco has one of the best purchasing powers when it comes to fire equipment or any kind of thing that we may need to purchase. What this is basically we're asking for an agreement with them where we can piggyback off of what their cost is. And they get some of the best costs in the state. Fortunately, Frisco's got a lot of spend a lot of money, but we can piggyback off of their good pricing when we do need something, and that's what this is about. All right, do I have a motion on this one regarding the local agreement?
I'll make a motion to enter into the interlocal cooperative purchasing agreement with the City of Frisco.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
You got a second. All right, if there's any discussion, I'll bring Chief Simmons. I'll let him answer them. Do we have any discussion on this?
I just have a question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a price limit on it and what kind of equipment that we can buy? Can you give us a little brief on that?
There are several different companies that Frisco has negotiated prices. Just kind of everybody's aware. Frisco is an ISO rating of 1, which is they have the highest rating with throughout the state of Texas. So they've gone through with several of these companies and negotiated prices. Some of the companies is Body Armor Outlet, Galls, GT Distributors, Hoyt breathing apparatus, which we use a lot for our fit testing, inspections, and testing of our air packs. So what this does is allows us to get that already negotiated best price by piggybacking off of Frisco. Roughly, like on Hoyt products, we get about a 36% discount from their normal retail price.
Are you able to monetarily assess what the savings could be by using this process?
Yeah, like I said, off of Hoyt, we roughly save around 36% off the retail price that they would charge us. So I do have some of that different pricing in there. And some, it's no cost to the city, but we have already purchased. We were fortunate enough in several companies when we bought our bunker gear. Last year, we bought some SCBAs. We use Hoyt for our annual testing, like I said. So we've already benefited in our uniforms from GT. We've already benefited off this price. We just realized we needed to get this ILA signed so we can continue on with this best price. I can spend $100. No, sir. So there's no obligation whatsoever. We don't even have to purchase from any of these companies if we choose not to.
It's just an agreement to get their best pricing when we utilize this price. Correct?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
We look at a lot of things. We look at buy board pricing, which has similar agreements for giving cities their best prices. This is just another option. It's just another tool for us to use to try to get the best pricing.
You'll see on the lawn, or that we back off the unions, like donation, or we're getting back off the EPS for the best pricing as well. That's what this is allowing us to purchase. All right, there's no other discussion on it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on to 6.2, discussion and action regarding consideration of a resolution adopting economic development policy pursuant to Chapter 380 of the Local Government Code. Mr. Hall, would you like to explain anything on this policy?
I mean, so, I'll look there. Yeah. Excuse me, I'll put on my spectacles. Yes, I need reading glasses. Yes, thank you very much for that. So, we all need policies where we're going to adopt for any kind of incentives, things like that, 380s, et cetera, any type of development, performance agreement, et cetera. Because you want to list the policies for, honestly, for several reasons. One, you want to list the policies so you get 14 people that come in and they all have similar agreements they want to do, and say they're all good for the city. You don't want to do 14 different ones. You want to be consistent. Well, so we got our policies. Say, hey, look, we can't approve this one or that one or whatever because it's not consistent with our policies. Or, hey, you know what, we are good with this. We like it's in a rule. We're good with most of it, but we can't approve part of it because of our policies. So there's a consistent source that anybody can go to and look at and say, hey, we kind of have an idea. Anybody that's going to come in with a 380 or any type of performance agreement, they can look at these policies and go, oh, okay, you know what? We're not going to waste our time. We're not going to waste the city's time unless we comply with the policies. So obviously you want to make policies that have a nice balance. You don't want to make policies that are so strict and so onerous, people are going to say, well, forget that. I don't want to do that. Then you miss out on $120,000 of sales tax each year. But you don't want to make them so friendly that it's going to overload your resources, whether they're human resources or other resources for the city. So you want to have a nice balance. So I think this policy got together with Lisa, and this is what I suggested. She's good with it, from what I understand. And so I would recommend before entering into any agreements, we have policies in place, because that's one of the things that you recite in your 380s. Hey, this follows our investment policies. So,
do I have a motion regarding the resolution adoption?
I move to approve the resolution adopting an economic development policy pursuant to Chapter 380 of the Texas Local Government Code.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Show that unanimous. All right, moving on to 6.3, discussion and action to consider economic development incentive agreement made by and among the city of McLendon-Chisholm and APCM LLC related to the county's purchasing office to be located in McLendon-Chisholm. Ms. Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Duck Duffy is here today. He is a CPA who represents various companies who enter into these types of sales tax agreements, and he is an expert really at all types of agreements. He was here with us a couple of years ago when we entered into a direct sales tax agreement with Highland Homes. That was a different type of agreement. This one is going to establish a purchasing office for Altura Homes so that we can, it would allow us to collect sales tax, and as in part of doing that, we would also rebate back a portion of that to Altura Homes. And I'm going to let Mr. Duffy kind of explain it from beginning to end because he can do a much better job of it than I can. And he can also answer any questions that you may have come in with today.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate your remarks, Lisa, and I appreciate working with you for several years on a couple of these deals. Let me make a couple of general comments, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Just personally, I grew up in a really small town in Texas, less than 1,000 people. I graduated high school from a city with less than 7,000 residents, and then went to Texas A&M. So I ended up going to work for two big accounting firms, two of the big four accounting firms, and have worked on my own for about 10 years. But I've spent about 35 years in the sales and use tax area, chaired a statewide CPA taxation committee for about 4 years. So I do have some significant background in local taxes. And I only brought up the issue about being raised in a small town because the laws in Texas really do not benefit small towns. For example, if the home builder does nothing but pay sales tax to the suppliers, this local sales tax goes to where the suppliers have places of business. A lot of times within the 4 largest metropolitan areas in the state of Texas. It's not in the suburbs. So part of the reason of going to some of the home builders, and Altura actually called me, but they said, hey, is there something we can do that would benefit the city as well as us and be a win-win scenario? And I said, well, there are situations like the one with Highland where you can basically allow the home builder to tell us, a supplier of building materials, don't charge me sales tax, I'll pay use tax. All use taxes are driven at the location where the materials are delivered and are first used. So that's what we did. For any home that Highland built in McLendon-Chisholm, those local taxes on the building materials get sourced to the city, and then they request a grant back once they've allocated and paid that tax to the state, and then given them a copy and given you a copy of their personal and confidential tax returns to prove that they paid it, and then allow you to verify that with the comptroller's office. So these 380 agreements are what I would call very performance driven. If the home builder doesn't do what they're supposed to do, if they don't file tax returns, if they don't pay money, and if you don't receive money on their behalf, then you owe them nothing. Absolutely nothing. So it's very performance driven. If they don't meet their obligations, then you really have no obligation to pay them anything. I will tell you they do have an obligation once they get a permit and they tell a supplier not to charge them sales tax. They have the capability to basically create an internal retailer. And in an office that's probably no more than 3,000 square foot, they could run anywhere from $10 to $12 million worth of building materials and act as a retailer, buy them in the city, and source the local tax to their single place of business where they have an office. And this office is on Highway 205, and it's in the city. We've confirmed that with the state, so we know that it will be there, and we know that the state has basically allowed a purchasing office to be set up as long as it's where your significant business decision makers and vital business services are offered, including purchasing and any type of arrangements where they're buying and reselling items at their corporate location. And this is their only location in the city. So one other thing I would mention is in 380 agreements, you can do almost anything. I've got copies of over 400 agreements, and I've seen people ask for property tax abatements. I've seen people ask for, maintaining their corporate employees in a city. And Frisco, you brought up, has offered $3,000 a head to get, corporate employees moved to Frisco. And this agreement asks for nothing in regards to employment or property tax abatements. It says basically, if I'm going to enter a partnership with a city, you would think it'd be 50-50 of the net income if you were just having a partnership. But basically, the company has said, we're going to pay for all the expenses, including mine, including accounting system changes, including everything else, and they get audited, which is worse than going to the dentist. I will just tell you that they're having all of those expenses on them to where I don't think they're going to break even probably for 18 months. On the flip side, the city would get new money immediately. From the first day they file a sales tax return, our good buddies in Austin will keep your money for 50 days before they give it to you, but once they file a tax return, it will eventually get to you. They will provide you a copy of that tax return, and then once a quarter, you'd be asked to pay a grant back based on a 50-50 split of the revenue, but not of the expenses. So, I went back and looked at the agreement, and it says APCM, which is their going to be internal retailer, would have to file monthly sales tax returns. They would have to give you a copy of those monthly sales tax returns, and they would have to offer you a waiver of sales tax confidentiality where you could go to the state of Texas and say, I want to see everything they've provided. And then until you receive that money, you still owe them nothing. And they still have to ask you for it before you have to provide it. So I think that this is a very equal performance-driven agreement. I would suggest that and recommend that you approve it just because I came from a small town, and this is not too many times that people come to small towns offering them pretty much free money. And I only say that because if they don't do anything different, you get nothing. None of that money will come here unless you get big lumber companies like Foxworth Galbraith or Builders First Source or any of these huge lumber companies or concrete companies or brick companies to move to McLendon-Chisholm. And I don't get the impression that's what the city wants. So with that, I'm going to say I drove down the highway. I saw a population of 1,373 people, and I said, this is growing, and I know it will. But at the same point, I think you want to keep that small town feel. This is a really small footprint in the city that would generate a pretty good amount of new revenue. So with that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Any questions?
Can you give us an idea of what would the city's revenue be?
They anticipate purchasing between $10 and $12 million worth of building materials a year. I say that's kind of based on their current purchasing levels. There's a lot of things they purchase, like plumbing, electrical, other types of things where they just pay all the sales tax and the labor and profit to the subcontractors. The things that we're talking about doing are the things like lumber, appliances, doors, windows, brick, stone that they buy separately, pay sales tax on, and then have somebody else install them. So it is a very limited number of their total purchases, but those would all be sourced to the city. And, if they grow and inflation grows, then those numbers would go up.
The estimate in the packet was $120,000 would be our estimated portion. We would rebate them back. That would be our 50% that we would keep, so about $240,000.
So if you said it was $10 million, it'd be $100,000. $200,000, you'd split it 50-50 at $100,000. If it's $12 million, it's $120,000. You're 50%, and they would have 50%. And like I said, I don't think they're going to break even for this for at least 18 months.
And just to be clear, you're not bringing in building supplies.
There's not going to be any building supplies in the city. And they will not store anything other than minor lamps or something that they've got in there, but there's not going to be any lumber or no big pieces of equipment. They're really just buying and reselling things and sourcing it to where they have their corporate headquarters.
We were told there might be 6 or 7 employees in the office setting.
I guess I'm concerned because I'm worried about the precedents this might set with other businesses coming into the area. How have other small cities dealt with that? Do you have any examples for us?
A lot of it depends on what type of agreement. A lot of different cities have done the similar agreement to what Highland Homes have done, because they said, they're not even bringing their corporate headquarters there. They're just agreeing to source the taxes on the building materials that they use in the city to that location. Whereas basically, no matter whether Altura Homes and APCM is selling into any number of suburban Texas cities, then all of that tax would come to you. As far as precedent, I'm quite aware that the city of Arlington recently did a 50-50 split of their 1.75% city tax with another home builder. And the city of Irving just approved last week a 75% split of their 1% city tax with another builder. So from that perspective, I think it's more of the fact of, are you incurring any expenses? Because they're basically saying, we're going to pay all the expenses if you'll split the revenue 50-50. And that's why I said your return on investment begins on day one. Theirs doesn't happen for 18 months. And as far as precedent, I think there's ample precedent to say that as long as a taxpayer is willing to pay all the expenses of something and you don't pay them anything unless they fulfill their obligations, it's a pretty good deal.
You might want to, I'm sorry, you might want to get Mr. Hollis' input a little bit. He's reviewed this agreement about precedents and how that might affect anybody else that approaches us for a similar agreement and our obligation to approve a future agreement because we've done this one.
I mean, I don't necessarily have a lot to add. The big thing that cities, governing bodies, governments are going to get in trouble for is when you have people that are very similar and you treat them differently without a good reason. So these are always a case-by-case basis. So if there's something in there that may not be, for example, like he said, if the taxpayer is not willing to foot all of the expenses, as he said, we start day one making money on this because we don't have anything out of our pocket. Well, if somebody comes up and says, yeah, we'll split the expenses with you, well, that's a completely different deal. So if you decline to do that one, there is zero effect, zero impact whatsoever because it's not the same thing as this deal. So the only danger, if you will, of setting precedent is if you start having exactly the same situations and you start treating them differently without any good reason. So again, these are all case-by-case basis, so you're really not going to know whether that's a situation until you get it out of it.
Yeah, you said that they're probably not going to be breaking even until about 18 months. What type of expenses are you talking about them incurring that's going to cost about $120,000 plus over 18 months?
Just as an example, if a home builder does nothing other than pay for supplies and sales tax, number one, they don't have to file sales tax returns. They sell real property. Real property, your house isn't subject to sales tax. But there's a lot of pieces of materials that are in it that are subject to sales tax. And so when you get right down to it, they've got a system that's used to just paying the sales tax to their suppliers. From a technical perspective, they've got to create a separate legal entity. So now there's two legal entities, a home builder and a retailer. And the retailer is going to have to buy those materials for resale, turn around and resell them to the home builder. And so there's really going to be two POs for every transaction. There's going to be filing administrative tax returns every month. There's going to be set up for audit, and there's going to be system changes that allow that to happen, to set up a new company, to set up the intercompany transactions, and to be able to report all that information to the comptroller because they will get audited. So you have to be prepared for an audit, and really they don't have to be audited today. As a home builder, they sell real property, they pay their taxes to suppliers, there's no audit. But you're having to prepare for all of this as if you're going to get audited because you probably will. If you're buying $10, $12 million a year in a single location and paying the tax to the city and to the state, then you have a higher likelihood of getting audited versus a mom and pop shop.
Lisa, are we administratively set to handle something like this? Because from what I read, there's penalties if we don't give them their grant in the timely manner that we're under agreement to do so.
Doug and I talked about it. They've agreed to actually go to quarterly payments rather than monthly, which will help us out on the accounting side of things and kind of keep our expenses and the accounting effort at least a little bit smaller so we don't have to touch it every month. They would do it quarterly. So I think it's manageable.
I would just tell you, based on my experience with other cities, they say that once a taxpayer has prepared all the information and sent it to the city, and then they request that once a quarter from the state and say, okay, do these line up? Does the amount on their sales tax return equal what you received? And it's not going to equal exactly because the state takes out 2% for an administrative fee, but they will adjust their grant request to take that in consideration. So every time they pay you $1, you'll get 98 cents, and they'll send you an invoice for half of the 98 cents. So, in that regard, I think that this is a situation where all of the information has to be provided by them, and they have to request the grant quarterly, even though they're filing monthly tax returns, before you even are obligated to pay them. and they have to provide all that information. And most of the cities that I've seen have told me it takes anywhere from an hour to 90 minutes to verify that information and make a payment. So that's maybe worst case 6 hours a year.
So is the 10-year time frame pretty normal too?
It's the minimum. The one in Arlington was for 40 years. Dell's done one for 60 years.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Sure.
If you'll do that, we'll turn the button off.
I will.
There you go. Thank you. All right. I'll entertain any motions on this one.
I'll make a motion to enter into the proposed Chapter 380 agreement with APCM LLC.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion amongst council? She's asking us.
Is there any discussion about it? I guess my question was that I really had was the precedents, and I understand the way that we wrote our economic development plan or whatever it was called that we just voted on, that we do have the ability to negotiate that. I think that was my biggest concern, and the fact that we were able to administratively run the program from our standpoint.
It's positive income for the city. It's very little cost on our part, so I mean, I think it's a good situation. I think it'd be great if it a little bit more of that percentage, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want to look a gift horse in the mouth as a small community. So, you know, you could go to Heath tomorrow and they probably swoop them up and say, ride them cowboy. So, you know, I'm comfortable with it, but if Tree and council want to push it off, then you know, I'm comfortable with that.
Just a question for Lisa. Lisa, you've been working with them, with Altura, for how long on this, and how have negotiations gone from your standpoint?
We started talking about it maybe late last year even, just kind of with the idea. They had to make sure that they could build their building here, so they went through the kind of the location process of did they want to put it somewhere else, and they ended up settling kind of where they are, and they had to do an adjustment to the PD zoning to allow for those setbacks, to allow that building to be built kind of right next to their current location. So we've kind of talked about it in one aspect or another for many, many months. I think it's gone well. When we first received the agreement, we had some concerns. I had Mr. Hall review the agreement. We actually gave them back several things, including going to quarterly payments versus monthly payments. They were really agreeable to, I think, everything that we asked for. We did not ask for a higher percentage. The 50-50 split, I think, is pretty standard. And it's a fair point that Mr. Hodges made that they could decide to build elsewhere and we would get nothing. in that case. They haven't said that they would go elsewhere, but, they have to look out for their needs as well, and it's an option.
And to amplify, this is their only building center in the state, right? I think that's what I read. Yeah.
And I mean, the revenue without bringing infrastructure stress, it's just a small office. Aesthetically, we don't have to worry about them taking advantage of the
I did have another city
things we have
administrator
stripped from
that
us.
said if we weren't going to do it, if I would please give their name so they could have it.
I was just asking that it be moved to the next, I don't know what kind of time schedule is on or what, if there is a time limit or anything like that, but I was just saying, I was more focused on what the budget than the tax thing than this.
Right, I understand.
And that's why I was just saying.
Right.
I'm not saying I'm against it, I'm just saying I need my ask.
Well, unfortunately, the motion is to approve unless Jim is willing to change his motion. And if you change your motion, then you have to.
I'm going to keep my motion on the table.
Is there a time limit, or are you looking at,
I would just say, as far as a timeline, the company told me that they wanted to have a physical and executed agreement before they go through and make all the system changes and come up and pay all the incremental money that they do. So they'll just defer it. If you want to wait, then you'll lose the money, they'll lose the money, and they won't incur the expenses until we have an agreement that, allows them to be compensated for all the expenses they're going to incur to make this happen.
Well, the original motion stands. If we don't have any further discussion, we need to vote. Any further discussion on it? If you're going to keep your motion as it stands.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it.
Okay. And you're still going to second it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not hear you. That's fine. So show 4 for it and 1 abstain. All right. Moving on to number 6.4, discussion and action regarding an ordinance approving and adopting the budget for fiscal year starting October 1st, 2019 and ending September 30th, 2020. The motion has specific wording, so we'll entertain a motion on this one.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Do you know the specific wording? Are you looking at the?
I have the wording I want to.
Okay.
I move to approve the budget, adjusting the budget to reflect a 15-cent tax rate from the 165 tax rate for the FY 2020 budget starting October 1st, 2019 and ending September 30th, 2019.
I think you're on the wrong one. We're talking about the budget first.
I know that.
I know what you mean. Would you say it one more time for me, though, just so I can get the
that's
language
fine.
right?
I move to approve the budget, adjusting the budget to reflect the 15-cent tax rate from the 165 tax rate for FY 2020.
I'll second that.
Okay. I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? There's no discussion?
No, I'd like to just discuss it just a little bit. I'm not really off the top of my head kind of speaker, but I've written a couple things down. First off, I would like to commend the mayor and the city staff for their work last year on the budget. 2019 was the first year for a fire department, and last year this time we had a fire chief, 3 trucks, and a grant. They've come far. I think we do have a way to go, and I personally don't want to get there the easy way, which is why I recommended the maintenance of the 15-cent tax rate. I think the 15 cent achieves a lot of what we want to do. It's been a long road to get there, starting with the first budget workshop, as we were reminded at our one of our citizen comments that we looked like we weren't sure what we were doing. Well, that was the first opportunity that we had a chance to look at the budget, and that's what you get when you have a workshop. I think next year, Lisa has spoken to us, we're going to take a little bit more time to look at the budget, give ourselves a little earlier time to start the process. But I do want to continue the fund balance policy with the reserves that we've got into effect. I do believe we've got a commitment for animal control, code enforcement. We have many ordinances out there. I think we need to enforce them. And I think the budget with an adjusted rate of 15 cents will get us where we need to go. Thank you for letting me talk.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. This one's a roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Show that unanimous. All right, moving on to 6.5, discussion and action to consider an ordinance setting a tax rate. This one says that 0.165 per 100 on all taxable. There's specific wording on this one as well. I'll entertain a motion. I know that you just said to the 15 cents, so.
I have a question for Lisa on
Absolutely,
that.
go ahead.
There's some math in here that would need to apply if we, with the 15 cent rate for that second number of that says, which is effectively 15.88% at the 16.5.
We can adjust that. You don't have to worry about that for your motion. We'll go back and we'll adjust the ordinance to reflect the correct rate if you want to go to the 15 cents.
Receipt. Okay.
All right, well, I'll entertain a motion on this one. I know there's specific wording on it. I'm just trying to find it.
I'll make a motion, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor. I move that the property tax rate remain the same by the adoption of the tax rate at existing 15 cents. So the rest of it.
I'm going to help you just a little bit.
Okay.
It's still an increase effectively.
Right.
So I think you want to word it as it's
As
written
okay.
there. Just plug in the number that you want to use.
That's taken straight from 26.05B and C of the tax code, have certain exact languages and motions you're supposed to make exactly as they write it out, and that's what this has got for you there.
Okay.
So, just like it says, you'll just say
All right.
15 cents.
This will end up as a soundbite, I'm sure. I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of the rate of 15 cents. Then those numbers, I don't know what that would be. Increase in the tax rate, and that the ordinance levying this tax rate be approved.
All right, I've got the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion amongst council? There's no discussion, then it's again a roll call vote. Ms. Trudy?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Show that unanimous. All right, moving on to 6.6, discussion and action to consider an ordinance ratifying the property tax increase reflected in the 2019-2020 budget. Do I have a motion on the ordinance ratifying it?
Just for a brief
Yes, ma'am,
explanation.
hold on.
This is also one of those that any time your budget takes in more money than the year before, you're required to use this ratification ordinance. So it's,
Yes.
even though it kind of seems redundant
Yes.
that we're doing the same thing that we just did, it's also required.
And please make no mistake, it's absolutely redundant.
Yeah, no, we know, there's a lot of redundancy and stuff. All right, do I have a motion on this?
Mr. Mayor, go ahead. I'll make a motion to.
Okay. All right, do I have a second? No. Oh, he can.
I didn't know. So I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance, the city of McLendon-Chisholm to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the fiscal year 19-20 budget, and provide an effective date of
I'm sorry,
when's the effective date?
October 1.
Yeah, October 1. All right, do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
'Cause this one did not need a roll call, is that correct?
So ordinance.
Right.
Okay. All right, moving on to 7.1, budget report for August of 2019. Any questions, council? If there's no questions, we'll move on to 7.2, building official report for August. Any questions?
I was just curious, are these new
Yeah.
homes, are these in Sonoma Verde Phase 2, or are they scattered around?
Not all of them, but almost all of them are Sonoma Phase 2 homes. So you'll notice we did have a nice little spike in the number of building permits the last month and a half or so.
I know there's a lot of new roads over there.
We're probably not going to make it to where we had hoped to be by the end of the year, but we're a lot closer than we were.
Right. Any questions on 7.3 on the fire calls, fire reports, or detailed report?
Nope.
Okay.
Just for...
Yes, sir.
I know citizens can access this information, but just for note that this month, that the city limit calls, one's within the city limits, 26 calls there, and 18 in the county.
Very good.
A little perspective.
Any question on the sheriff's report for August? If not, we will move on to updates, discussion, and direction to staff. I don't know if we have anything for you at this moment as far as that's concerned. My reports and announcements. I'm going to Colorado for a couple of days, rest and relaxation. That's probably my biggest announcement or report. My wife has decided that since our anniversary is next week, that I need to show her what the mountains of Colorado look like, since I talk about them all the time. So we're going to take a couple of days and do that. I'm the good husband. I go, yes, ma'am. We do have MC 50 coming up. Guys, we're getting into that busy time of year. Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. We're going to have kids all over the place come Halloween, wanting to go door to door. And, if you haven't noticed, depending on where you live in our city, we've got kids doing fundraisers, whether it's buying the different cards from whatever high school or middle school or wherever they go to I'm starting to see the flyers for candies and candles, and I have kids in the high school I work at. I've already bought 2 or 3 T-shirts this year to support the different athletic events. Just know the kids are out there and support them when you can. It's tough for those kids to come knock on your door. That was a challenge for me. I didn't want to knock on somebody's door and ask them for money or to buy something, but support the kids. They're our future. Other than that, I really don't have anything. Ms. Kipphut?
Nothing.
Mr. Hodges?
No actual report, just a couple of comments.
Sure, go ahead.
I want to commend the council and thank each one of you for your level of professionalism and working on this budget, working on the tax rate. I won't say it was a pleasure talking about tax rate, but it was, I want to thank each one of you for that. To the citizens that have major comments, I hate taxes more than anybody else, trust me. I just cringe every, whatever it is, I don't want to look at it. So believe me, I get it. At the same time, and we as a group are trying to be as fiscally responsible as we possibly can. And as other folks said, we kind of were dealt with a certain set of circumstances, and so we're we're trying to balance the two. So I thank everybody for their comments this evening. And I really am confident that we've got the community. We're working on the unity aspect, as somebody said. I think that's not going to be an overnight process. Hopefully, I feel like we as a council, and I hope that we're kind of heading in the right direction. I feel that we are. But I won't prolong the matter. Thanks for letting me.
Thank you. And if you didn't notice, he kind of cringed during the presentation when the guy made the dentist joke.
No respect.
He's like, Ms. Trudy? Awesome. Awesome. And the date again for everybody to? Okay. Jim?
Not at this time, no, sir.
Mr. Dahl?
I'm good. No.
All right. Well, seeing that we have gone through everything in here, the time is now 7:45. This meeting is adjourned. Well, we're trying to keep them down. I don't know that we're always successful, but we're trying. Yeah, that's the kicker.
Yeah, I don't know when I'm.
That and no, that's pretty much the kicker. Don't freaking smile.
Oh, you're coming out for that?
Hey, is our Lance?
I mean,